Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Logan, and if you're into movies like we are, you probably have a sizable collection of physical DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4K Blu-rays. But I think we can all agree that they're not always the most convenient way to access your movie library. And there are a few ways to get around this problem. You could use regular streaming services, but they might not offer the best quality or most immersive audio formats, for example. And there are also some expensive in-home streaming solutions like Kaleidoscape or Zapiti. And while they're both pretty intuitive to set up and use, each of them carry a pretty hefty price tag as well. But there is another option. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to take these old discs and store them on your own computer, USB hard drives, or even a NAS for streaming your movie collection all across your home network. This is actually a lot easier than most people make it out to be, in my opinion, and it's a great way to improve the experience of using your home theater. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then stick around and we'll get into it right after the intro. Alright, so to get started, you'll obviously need some physical movies to rip. We're going to be doing these 4K Dolby ATMOS movies, but what I'm going to show you here will also work perfectly for regular Blu-rays and DVDs as well, so you should be able to convert your entire library to mass storage without too much hassle. Along with the movies, you also need a compatible optical drive for reading your media. There are lots of different drives on the market that can rip Blu-rays and DVDs, but for the longest time it was a pain trying to find a drive that could actually rip 4K Blu-rays, as you need to make sure that your drive has older firmware that's actually compatible with the ripping software. It wasn't all that uncommon in the past to buy a 4K drive that everyone said worked great, only to take apart your computer and install it, and find that the manufacturer released an update for that model that broke 4K ripping, so you'd need to try to downgrade your firmware if that was even possible. Thankfully though, things have gotten a lot easier, and there are a few models of USB Blu-ray drives on the market that will work right out of the box. We decided to grab this Pioneer USB drive for $170, and it works great, but there are some cheaper drives out there that will also get the job done just fine. We'll leave links in the description to those. If you ever have any questions about the compatibility of a particular drive, we'll also leave a link to a MakeMKV forum thread that lists all the drives people have tested 4K ripping with, and you can usually find out if there have been any firmware updates for a drive that could potentially have broken the 4K ripping feature. With that out of the way, you'll also need a computer to plug the drive into and run the software on. This doesn't have to be anything fancy. Any old laptop or desktop should work fine, but preferably you would have at least a USB 3 port to get the best performance possible out of your drive. The last physical thing that you might need is a place to actually store all of your movies. A typical 4K movie can be anywhere from 45 to 90 gigabytes of storage on average, so if you want to rip a lot of movies, you should probably invest in an external USB hard drive like either one of these, which are 1 terabyte each. But there are plenty of multiple terabyte drives available on places like Amazon that would also work really well if you need a place to store hundreds of movies. Another option for storage, which is the route we ultimately ended up taking, is to get a network-attached storage device, otherwise known as a NAS. These are basically little computers designed to run 24/7 with a bunch of hard drives inside, allowing for a huge amount of data storage. In our case, we have 6 separate 14 terabyte hard drives in our main Synology unit, along with 5 more 8 terabyte drives in the smaller expansion unit off to the side, giving us a total of 124 terabytes of raw storage, which is enough for somewhere in the ballpark of 1,800 uncompressed 4K movie rips. The only problem with this is that there are only about 1,200 4K Blu-ray movie releases that actually exist, so we actually have more storage in our NAS than the number of 4K movies that exist to fill it up. Maybe this was a little excessive, but the point is, if you really wanted to, this is a good way to store a huge amount of movies, and you're not going to be reliant on an external streaming service or a spotty internet connection. So, at this point, you hopefully have everything that you need to get started, so let's go ahead and talk about the software side of things. Go ahead and get your 4K ripping drive and plug it into your PC, preferably into a USB 3 port. Depending on your model, this might either be a black square USB port, a blue square USB port, or a USB Type-C port. Thankfully, the Pioneer drive that we bought actually came with cables for both different types of connectors, and that's how we get it working with anything from this laptop from only a couple years ago, or even this 12-year-old MacBook over to the side right here. Now at this point, if you have enough USB ports on your computer, you can also plug in a portable hard drive just like this one if you want to rip directly to a USB drive. And of course, the next step is to actually go ahead and install MakeMKV. And if you're on Windows or Mac OS, this is a really easy process. Just open a web browser and go to MakeMKV.com, where you'll see their main web page. And from here, you can click on the download section. Here you can see downloads for both Windows and Mac OS X. This is compatible with both Intel and ARM Macs in case you have an Apple computer, but whichever platform you have, you can just hit the download button right there. And of course, no matter what computer you're on, you can just install this like a regular app, wait for it to load, and install it however you would any other program on your computer. And if you happen to be on Linux like I am, the one Flatpak on FlatHub does seem to be an official release, and although it is a couple versions out of date, it worked perfectly for our purposes, picked up our drive without having to grant any extra permissions, so you can go ahead and install that with your favorite Flatpak client. Once MakeMKV is installed on your computer, you're going to want to go ahead and open it. As you can see here on my screen, I'm getting a warning about the application version being old. I'm going to go ahead and actually install the beta key so that I can get past this issue. MakeMKV is still in beta, so the developer is offering the key to use it for free. It resets every 60 days, so you have to go and look it up and get a new key to keep using the program, but it's a small price to pay for the functionality that you get. And if you end up really liking MakeMKV, you can support the developer by buying a key. We ended up buying one about 12 years ago, and it's been serving us very well ever since. To install the key, all you have to do is make a very quick Google search in your web browser for MakeMKV beta key. You can see this link right here. MakeMKV is free while in beta. Go ahead and click on that, and you can see that the developer, Mike Admin, has posted the most current beta key, which is right here in green. Just going to select that, copy it, and register MakeMKV. I can paste it into that box, and as you can see, I am now registered. If you didn't get that warning box like I did, all you have to do is go to Help and Register at the top, and you'll have a text box where you can paste the key in, just like that. At this point, if you have your drive plugged in, you can look at the right side of the screen here and see some information about the drive. And one of the big things that you're going to want to look for is the Libre drive information right here. Libre drive should be enabled, and as you can see, the firmware type is original and unpatched, which means that the 4K drive that I have will actually be able to use MakeMKV to rip a 4K Blu-ray. If Libre drive is not enabled or your firmware type is not unpatched, you may have to look into getting a different drive. Make sure you have the correct drive selected up here, and if you still just cannot get it to show, you might have to look into getting a new drive. Another thing that you should quickly do just to make life easier is go into the View options and Preferences, click on the General tab right here, and enable Expert Mode. And don't worry, this isn't going to make anything more difficult to use. It's just going to afford us a few more options that we can use to improve some things with our rips. So go ahead and enable that, apply, and OK. So with that, if everything seems to be working properly, you can grab a 4K Blu-ray disc, just like this, and put it into your drive. Give that a little bit just to load. And once MakeMKV detects the disk, you'll see this button right here that you can click on to open the Blu-ray disk. Give it just a little bit longer and it will start the process of decrypting what's on the disk so it can actually look at the video and audio information for you to start a rip. And just like that, you can see that we've gotten to this new screen that gives us some information about the contents of the disk. If you got taken back to the previous screen, then look at the log information down here at the bottom of the window and see if you got any error messages. If your disk couldn't load properly, you might have gotten an error like this with a blue link to a dump file. What you can do is take that dump file and email it to svq@makemkv.com, and they'll hopefully be able to get the data that MakeMKV needs to open that disk properly. So send it in, wait a couple days, and try again. This is a pretty uncommon issue since every time someone uploads a new dump, the keys will get uploaded for everyone to use. But if you do have a bad disk, then go ahead and send that dump in. At this point, you should end up with a list of different playlists that you can rip from the disk. I chose an easy one here that only has one, so as you can see, we have the Blu-ray disc of Thor, and then we have a title of Thor with 16 chapters, that's 57 gigabytes. I'm going to go ahead and open this movie, and you can see a lot more information opens up. So what we're going to do here to start filtering through and decide what we do want from the disk and what we don't want from the disk is to deselect everything and then run through the list and get everything that I do want. So what you can do is right-click on the audio, for example, and unselect all. That will remove all of the selections in here, and we can start choosing what we do want. So the video is always going to be enabled. We don't want to make any changes to that. We don't need to make any changes to the chapters. This is just the chapter selection as you're watching the movie on a Blu-ray player. We don't need to touch any of that. What we like to do is get the audio first. So as you can see here, there's a True HD Surround English and a Dolby Digital Surround 5.1 English inside of that. And there's also some other languages, probably different descriptive audio for people that are visually impaired and things like that. In our RIP, what we want is the True HD Surround sound, which of course is Dolby Atmos audio. And we also like to get the Dolby Digital audio inside of that in case we're playing on some device that doesn't support the True HD Atmos data. Another thing that we can do really quickly to make the movie show up nicer in Plex is to click on this True HD Surround track and rename it to Dolby Atmos. Since we know this is Atmos data, this will just make it look nicer when we're actually looking through the movie in Plex and adjusting settings. With that, the next thing that we're going to start selecting are subtitles. And what we're going to do right now, and what we usually do for our movies, is look for every English subtitle and enable it along with the English forced only subtitle that's inside of it. I'm going to scroll through the whole list just to make sure there aren't any others. In this case, we just have the two, which is perfectly fine. We're going to select both of those. In our RIP, we only want English audio, English subtitles, and the video. At this point, you can also choose a folder that you actually want to RIP the video to. In my case, I'm fine with the default, so I'm not going to bother with this, but you can choose to save the RIP to a USB hard drive or your network attached storage here. You just do it however it's mounted in your operating system. All we have to do now is click the MakeMKV button. It will warn us that that directory doesn't exist, which is fine. We're going to go ahead and create it by clicking yes. And it will start the process of ripping our 4K Blu-ray into a working MKV file that we can play on our computer. This is probably going to take about an hour or so, so sit down, make a cup of coffee, and just wait. And once MakeMKV tells you that the RIP is actually finished, you can go ahead and look at the folder that you saved it in. And you can see right there I have a 52 gigabyte MKV for Thor, so I'll double click that. It's going to open in my media player, which is VLC in this case. If you don't have it installed, it could be a really good tool to use to check and make sure that your RIPs are working. But as you can see, it is currently playing the movie. So you can throw this on a NAS if you have a Plex media server installation somewhere on your network, or you put it on your USB drive. The movie is now ripped. And that's pretty much it. So if you follow these steps for each movie, you should be able to pretty much rip your entire 4K collection off to a hard drive or a NAS and set up your own in-home streaming system. There are actually a lot of different ways to go about watching your movie rips from a USB hard drive. A popular one is to plug the hard drive into an NVIDIA Shield player and run Plex Media Server on it, but that's kind of outside the scope of this video. Let us know if you're considering investing in a setup to rip physical media, and if so, keep us updated on your experience. I hope you found this video helpful, and let us know if you have any questions or comments down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. And as always, have an awesome day.